It is easy to believe we distrust hope because we are cynical or simply realistic. We look at the world, we look at the historical data of our own lives, and we decide that being pessimistic is just being smart. We call it managing expectations.
And that's exactly where the mind tricks us, isn't it? We frame it as a mindset issue. We think if I could just reframe my thoughts, challenge my negative thinking or adopt a more optimistic attitude, I could finally trust the good things.
Right.
But that intellectual framing completely misses the point of where hope actually lives and, more importantly, why we withdraw from it.
Which is to say, we are not dealing with a failure of willpower or attitude here. We're dealing with something far more ancient, more biological.
Precisely. Hope does not live in the mind, it lives in the body. And this is the core conflict we are diving into today. Most people withdraw from hope because their bodies learned long ago that wanting something, allowing yourself to feel that soft desire, is fundamentally dangerous.
That is such a powerful, crucial distinction. It shifts the entire conversation from, a moral failing or a failure of mindset to a matter of protective biology. We are not cynical. We are, as you say, braced.
Yes, braced. Our body remembers every single instance where that soft desire was followed by pain. Hope leading to humiliation, trust leading to abandonment, or that feeling of expansion being immediately followed by collapse.
And that memory, that bracing response, it was once survival wisdom.
It absolutely was. It served you when you were too young or too vulnerable to handle the devastation of disappointment. But when that mechanism gets stuck, well, that bracing, as the insightful reflection written by Helen Mudeba highlights, becomes wisdom that has nowhere left to go.
It's an adaptation that's outlived its utility.
Exactly. It's confusing the past for the future. The body doesn't need present evidence of danger to protect you. It only needs the memory of it.
That makes perfect sense. The body says, I know what happens when we feel good. We get hit. So when something genuinely expansive arrives, the body's first priority is to shrink the exposure, to minimize the potential wound size. It's a preemptive shutdown.
It is. The nervous system prioritizes survival over possibility every single time. And that is why we have to start this deep dive, not with the thought exercise, but with a body check.
Okay, let's unpack this for you, the listener, because this is where the deep dive gets really practical.
Yeah.
If you are listening right now, I invite you to try a quick, gentle body check. Think about a soft desire, a hope that feels fragile, maybe a professional shift you secretly long for, a tender connection that feels wobbly, or a big personal dream you keep hidden. Now, just notice your body's initial immediate reaction.
Do you tighten? Do you brace your shoulders, clench your jaw, or tuck your pelvis slightly, preparing for impact?
Or do you soften? Does your breath deepen? Do you find yourself leaning forward just a little with curiosity?
That visceral reaction reveals the body's protective story. If you tightened, your body is telling you, I remember what happened last time I opened here.
And if you feel yourself leaning in, your body is saying, I have built the capacity to hold this possibility. Neither response is wrong, of course, but both are so rich with information.
Our mission today is to explore this exact process of moving from that ingrained protection to genuine possibility. We're going to be guided by some frameworks that help us map this internal landscape.
Right, because when that old feeling of fear answers the door to a hopeful opportunity, these maps help us locate exactly where we are standing.
We will be using two crucial frameworks throughout this deep dive, the pathway to sovereignty and the calm framework.
And these are maps, not prescriptions, right?
Yeah.
They help us navigate that crucial gap between deep longing and self-protection. We are going to look at 3 very specific lives caught in this tension to understand how the body learns to trust growth again.
Let's quickly introduce the tools that will help our characters, and you interrupt the nervous system reflex. The calm air framework is a simple way to pause when your perception contracts.
And it's read as the word calm, not C-A-L-M.
Exactly. It reminds us to interrupt that automatic loop it stands for. Check the story, acknowledge the impulse, locate the state, and move wisely. It shifts you from reaction to response.
Perfect. We'll see how powerful that 4-step pause can be when panic hits. And then we have the pathway to sovereignty. This gives us a structural gradient, 6 inner levels that shape how we interpret possibility, safety, and hope. You don't need to memorize the list, but understanding the first few levels is key to understanding our character's starting points.
The pathway starts at the foundation, where life is simply about minimizing threat, which is really where our 3 characters begin before their shifts.
Okay, so at the bottom we have survival. This is where threat detection is just. It's locked on. You're filtering every piece of information through the worst-case scenario.
Hypervigilance. The body believes everything is urgent and that contraction is the only safety.
Then you move up to seeking stability. Here, safety is sought through rigid control and predictability. You are trying to manage life rather than live it, often through obsession with details or clinging to rigid routines, avoiding discomfort at all costs.
This level is essential, of course, but if we stay here, we mistake management for mastery.
Wait, can you clarify that? Isn't seeking stability just being responsible? How do we know when routine is structure versus when it's armor? Because I think a lot of us, myself included, default to planning things out to feel safe.
That's a critical question. Stability becomes armor when it actively blocks expansion. If a routine is flexible, if it allows for the unexpected, and if you can drop it without a corresponding panic, it's structure.
Okay.
If a routine prevents you from responding authentically to new invitations, if the thought of deviating causes immediate dread, it is armor. We see this with our first character, Layla, whose planning becomes obsessive protection.
That helps ground the first two levels. We will introduce self-awareness and the levels above it when our characters reach those milestones. But first, let's bring in the final tool, the circles of influence.
This one is so important. When we feel overwhelmed by hope or fear, it's often because we are trying to manage something that isn't ours to hold.
So the circles provide that discernment. What belongs to me entirely, that's full influence. Your choices, your integrity, your willingness to try.
And what belongs to another or the external world, that is limited influence. You know how you show up, communicate, offer effort, but you cannot determine the result.
And crucially, what belongs entirely to the world, fate, or other people's unpredictable emotions. That is, no influence. Outcomes, other people's feelings, the future. Learning to categorize this helps the body relax its bracing.
This grounding is everything because it allows the soft part of you to come out. Now, let's set the stage for our three characters. The territories where their hope and protection meet are distinct, yet so universal.
As the reflection we are using outlines, we are going to explore three intersecting territories. The hope that hurts, where expansion feels like danger.
The shield and the spark, where protection blocks change.
And hope inside the body, not the mind, where transformation requires capacity, not certainty.
These territories show us how unique our defense mechanisms are, but how universal the underlying fear is. The fear of exposure that comes with allowing something good to matter.
Our first character is Layla. She has a high-achieving, deeply prepared mind, but her body operates on a historic warning label. Danger, success ahead. Her story illustrates the hope that hurts, where expansion feels exactly like stepping onto a rickety bridge.
And Layla had worked tirelessly for this. She wanted a promotion for 2 years, and it was a strategic, deeply imagined goal. She was ready for the logistical challenges. She deserved it.
And when it finally arrived, her director told her the role was hers, complete with relocation support and a significant salary increase. What happened was the core paradox we're discussing. Instead of celebrating, her body collapsed into a full panic response.
Her chest went tight immediately. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably by the time she got to her car. She spent the next 2 weeks unable to sleep, cycle spinning through a catalog of disasters.
Public failure, disappointing everyone who believed in her, her inadequacy being exposed on a larger stage, and isolation in the new city.
Her mind, which longed for this, immediately moved to destroy the very thing she had been given. It's heartbreaking. So why the immediate, overwhelming physical panic?
Because her body learned a profound, painful lesson early on. Expansion was dangerous.
Yes. Historically, for Layla, achievements were often met with conditional approval or criticism rather than celebration. Think of a parent praising a report card but immediately following it with, "You need to do better next time."
Right. So the body learns that visibility leads to pain, and success just creates a greater expectation of failure.
So wanting something fully meant the loss of it, or the criticism of it, would be unbearable. She learned to shrink her dreams to fit within the borders of what she felt she could control. When something large arrived, the nervous system read it as an invasion.
Bracing against the inevitable devastation.
It's the definition of tenderness mistaken for danger. The promotion was an invitation to a bigger self, and the nervous system registered the bigness as a full-blown threat.
Okay, so let's apply the pathway to sovereignty to her situation as she spirals in those initial 2 weeks. She's trying to reject the job offer, researching the new city obsessively, reading the job description forensically for loopholes.
Rehearsing conversations where she turns the job down using meticulous, logical reasons.
Where is she operating?
She is living fully at the survival level. Her nervous system is locked into threat detection. Her thoughts aren't rational worries. They are survival strategies disguised as rationality,
She's trying to protect herself from hope by destroying it preemptively.
believing that if she self-sabotages, she manages the pain rather than risking external failure. And layered right on top of that survival mode is seeking stability.
That's the obsessive action, the excessive lists, the impossible timelines, preparing for obstacles that haven't even materialized. She is using planning as an emotional shield.
And notice the physical manifestation of this rigid control. Tight shoulders, a perpetual frown, clenched jaw, even while sleeping. That physical bracing offers the illusion of mastery. But it doesn't calm the underlying terror at all.
Because the terror isn't about the logistics of the job.
Not at all. It's about the vulnerability of wanting it and exposing that want.
When I first read this part of the reflection, I thought, oh, so she just needs to plan less. But it seems the problem isn't the planning, it's the compulsion behind it.
Exactly. Structure born of choice is empowering. Structure born of compulsion is a prison. Layla's spiral only stops when her body physically refuses to continue the charade.
The collapse, the tight chest, the vision tunneling, the panic attack at her desk, it forces stillness. What happens in that necessary interruption?
The panic is so intense it drowns out the cognitive stories she was telling herself. In that silence, something wiser becomes audible.
The realization.
The realization that the fear is not about the promotion or her skill set. It's about the exposure of allowing herself to be seen in her fullness. The genuine, frightening possibility that she might actually belong in a life she deeply desires.
Wow. So the job was the catalyst. But the true internal threat was the vulnerability of being fully seen.
Yeah.
This moves her across the crucial threshold into self-awareness.
And self-awareness is the moment the pattern becomes visible. She realizes the fear she is feeling is history, not truth. She sees that the fear is not evidence of her inadequacy, it is evidence of her conditioning. Now, choice becomes possible.
And this is where the calm framework becomes her anchor.
It does. When those disaster scenarios cycle, she uses the C. Check the story. She pauses the internal demand to flee by asking, is this catastrophe happening now? Or is my body responding to a past disappointment I keep mistaking for the future?
That question creates space.
A lot of space. She stops obeying the reflex immediately. Then she moves to L, locate the state. She begins noticing the impulse to retreat, the tension in her throat, the way her shoulders pull forward defensively. She realizes her nervous system is responding to exposure and visibility, not actual professional inadequacy.
The fear is the echo, not the truth. Once she isolates the true fear exposure, she can start sorting what is hers to carry. This is applying the circles of influence.
The fear that she would fail, or the fear of others' judgments about her performance, that lived entirely in the no-influence circle. She cannot control outcomes or people's opinions.
So trying to manage that fear through obsessive planning was just exhausting.
Completely, she lets that anxiety go, but what remains in her full influence?
Her willingness to try, her capacity to learn, and the choice to meet the opportunity without demanding certainty first.
Yes, she owned the effort, the integrity of showing up for the opportunity despite the fear, and this leads her up the pathway to integrity.
She accepted the promotion, not because the fear vanished, but because she allowed fear and desire to coexist. This is acting from truth, even when her nervous system was screaming, "Danger!"
She began moving toward wholeness, the capacity to hold contradiction. She didn't have to wait to feel brave, she just had to act bravely. Layla's fear was evidence that she had conditioned her body to brace whenever something good arrived.
Her capacity grew not through fighting the fear, but through the realization that she could be uncertain and still move forward.
The essential learning from this story is so powerful. Where do you shrink when something expands? Layla had to learn that the nervous system's resistance to bigness is often proof that bigness is exactly what is required for growth.
Layla's fear was rooted in the future, the fear of becoming too big. Our next character, Theo, shows us the fear rooted firmly in the past, the fear of losing what we cherish. His story illustrates the shield and the spark, where self-protection becomes so complete it blocks the very thing that could change everything.
Theo is a widower, 4 years out from his wife's death. He built a life around repetition and routine. Same coffee shop, same park route, same choir rehearsal. It was a perfectly constructed emotional containment system.
Designed to hold the shape of the immense loss without ever asking him to feel the full weight of it again.
The routine was essential scaffolding, but it quickly became armor. It contained the pain, but also prevented life from entering. Then, a small, gentle invitation for coffee from Claire cracks the system.
A simple coffee date. What is his immediate visceral reaction.
Low-grade dread and total freeze. When they met, he was polite, conversational even, but completely empty. His energy was inwardly focused, retreating further inside as she tried to connect.
And he left the date with equal relief that the endurance test was over, and shame that he could not be present for a moment of potential tenderness.
His response seems so disproportionate to a simple coffee invitation, but the body had learned a different lesson.
That longing felt like a betrayal.
That's the surface story of loyalty. But underneath, Theo was protecting himself not primarily from love, but from grief. Wanting someone new meant admitting how much he missed his wife and how capable he was of feeling love again, which, paradoxically, threatened the carefully constructed stability he had built around her absence.
The shield he built to guard against the devastation of loss became a prison, preventing any new life from entering. He was avoiding grief by avoiding life itself.
Yes. So he immediately contracts. He stops going to the coffee shop. He considers quitting the choir. He tightens his routines until they become suffocating armor.
This places him clearly back on the lower levels of the pathway.
He is operating from survival, equating connection with threat and isolation with safety. Every interaction is something to manage, and he intellectualizes his withdrawal. I'm protecting her. I'm not ready. All true, but also a shield.
And his seeking stability manifests as preemptive protection. Rigid control over small details prevents him from ever having to arrive fully in the present moment.
His physical state reflects this. Chest closed, shallow breath, a fixed, managing gaze. He is physically armored against surprise. He has created certainty in his daily life to manage the uncertainty of existence after profound loss.
But the body does not forget what it once knew. The crack in the armor happens unexpectedly outside his controlled environment.
It was during choir rehearsal, learning a tender old piece. A specific lyric reached a soprano high note, and it slipped past his walls, bypassing the cognitive guard dogs entirely. The melody opened something in his chest he hadn't felt in years. It was an ache underneath the protection, a longing for closeness itself, for simple human connection.
Not just the memory of his late wife.
Exactly, and that moment of stillness caused by the involuntary emotional flood forced his recognition. He realizes his withdrawal was not loyalty, but fear. If he opened up, he would have to grieve all over again.
Both the old loss and the years of self-imposed numbness.
That is the move into self-awareness. He could see the pattern. He was sacrificing the possibility of future joy to avoid revisiting past pain. He began using the calm framework immediately following that choir moment.
His first step is the A. Acknowledge the impulse.
He notices the withdrawal as a physical tightening in the solar plexus, a literal pullback that precedes the thought of avoidance. He simply registers that his body is trying to flee.
Instead of following that impulse, he stays with it long enough to move to the L. Locate the state. He asks, what is my body actually protecting me from right now?
And the answer surfaces. Devastation. The utter collapse of the self that happened 4 years ago. Not love.
That sounds great in theory, but when you are mid-freeze state, how do you manage to acknowledge the impulse when the body is demanding immediate retreat?
The shift happens in increments. He doesn't have to stop the feeling. He just has to stop obeying the impulse immediately. It's a moment of mindful separation. I feel the urge to run, but I am going to stay put for 5 more minutes.
That tiny choice introduces the possibility of sovereignty.
Once he separates the fear of future loss from the possibility of present connection, he can use the circles of influence to anchor his path forward.
So the actual pain of his wife's loss, that must be tended to, but it cannot be the sole determinant of his present life. That's limited influence. And the narrative that moving on is a betrayal, that's a story he can consciously release.
And his full influence is his willingness to be honest with Claire. Not forcing connection, but showing up in alignment, choosing connection from honesty rather than from avoidance or performance.
This moves him toward integrity.
Yes. He reached out to Claire, not with a grand gesture, but with honesty. He admitted his shutdown state, admitted he was learning how to be present again, and asked if she would be willing to meet him where he was.
And that integrity allowed him to move into wholeness. He learned he could hold grief and longing in the same body. The freeze began to thaw in small increments. He allowed his life to be shaped by possibility rather than solely by past devastation.
The essential learning here. What do you mistake for safety when it is really avoidance? Theo's shield, meant to guard against loss, became a prison preventing life from entering.
We've explored the fear of expansion with Layla and the fear of loss with Theo. Our final character, Marisol, shows us the territory of hope inside the body, not the mind, where the body is trained to feel guilt for wanting anything for itself.
Marisol's life was defined by caregiving for her sister for 6 years. It wasn't just a duty, it became her identity. She deeply believed her own desires could wait, equating selflessness with virtue and safety.
Her desires were disguised as service to others.
Exactly. So when her sister moves away, removing the structure that defined her days and identity, the empty space is not freedom, it is terror.
The collapse reveals a suppressed, tender longing that she had convinced herself was selfish.
For Marisol, hope was dangerous not because it might lead to external disappointment, but because it exposed the part of her that wanted something for herself. In her inherited belief system, wanting for herself equaled abandoning others, a profound core wound of guilt.
To avoid that guilt and the inner void, she immediately fills the space. Extra shifts, volunteering, childcare, joining committees. She moves so quickly that she avoids the core, terrifying question, what do you want, Marisol?
This is her survival mechanism. She equates self-abandonment with safety and personal desire with danger. Every flicker of want is shut down by finding someone else who needs her. It is avoidance dressed up as altruism.
And her seeking stability is manifested entirely through guilt-driven behavior, framing self-abandonment as nobility. The physical state here is so telling. Tight stomach, low-grade nausea when she thinks about prioritizing herself.
And curved shoulders, a physical posture designed to make herself small and acceptable to others. The guilt serves as moral cover. If she can frame her constant service as noble sacrifice, she doesn't have to admit how terrified she is of her own inherent bigness.
And the frightening possibility that she had wasted years building someone else's life instead of her own.
The system cracks when a friend, completely unaware of the inner struggle, asks her casually what she plans to do with her free time now that her sister has moved.
Marisol's throat closes, her mind goes utterly blank. She cannot answer the question.
That silence, that inability to name her own desire, is the moment of devastating clarity. She realizes she has no idea who she is without the caregiving role, the shock of self-erasure.
She realizes she had protected herself from her own hope by making herself indispensable. The fear wasn't external judgment. It was the fear that naming her wants would reveal the years she had spent denying herself.
This forces her into self-awareness. The cost of protection, the diminishing of her own self, now outweighs the cost of risk. She sees she has been living in reaction to fear, not in alignment with desire.
But questioning those core inherited beliefs about selflessness must be incredibly difficult. How does she start?
By working with the Kalman framework to interrupt the guilt reflex, she starts with the L, locate the state. She notices the guilt immediately, the stomach tightness, the insistent inner voice saying, choosing self is selfish.
Instead of obeying that voice, she uses the C.
Yeah.
Check the story.
She pauses the reflex to say yes to a new commitment and asks, is this belief that I must always prioritize others, one I inherited from people who needed me to stay small, or is it a universal, undeniable truth?
By asking that question, she starts to untangle the circles of influence related to her guilt.
The inherited cultural expectation to prioritize others, that is no influence. She cannot change decades of conditioning overnight. The guilt her family might feel if she chooses differently, limited influence.
She can communicate with integrity, but she cannot control their emotional response.
Her full influence becomes pure, radical practice. Practicing naming a desire without justifying or apologizing for it, noticing when she says yes because she wants to, versus when she is afraid to say no.
This is the movement toward integrity.
She is honoring her own truth, even though it conflicts with the identity she had been performing. She allows herself to sit with the discomfort of wanting something for herself. A quiet evening, an hour of reading, a walk without purpose.
Denying her desires was not generosity, it was self-erasure.
This leads to wholeness. She realizes she can love her family and have a self. She no longer needs to make herself small to be acceptable. Her breath could reach her belly again because she wasn't bracing for the guilt.
Marisol learned that transformation requires capacity, not certainty. The essential learning here. What hope have you silenced because it feels selfish to want it? Her body had to learn it could hold desire without the world collapsing.
These three stories, Layla's panic, Theo's freeze, Marisol's guilt, they feel unique. Yet they all share that profound common thread that reinforces the core concept we started with.
The internal somatic change must precede the external shift.
Absolutely. Nothing external changed for them initially. Layla's promotion remained the same opportunity. Theo's invitation was still just coffee. Marisol's sister was still leaving. The circumstances did not cause the suffering.
The suffering was caused by the protective patterns, which were brilliant adaptations to earlier pain but had become rigid armor.
Their protective patterns, Layla's panic, expansion is danger, Theo's freeze, connection risks loss, and Marisol's guilt, self-desire is betrayal, were all deeply ingrained strategies the body learned when it lacked the capacity to hold complexity. They are all versions of the same core mechanism in contraction.
And that is what the pathway to sovereignty reveals so clearly. Survival and seeking stability are necessary foundational stages, but they dramatically narrow perception. When you're operating from those lower levels, possibilities are invisible.
You can't see the path because you're busy running from perceived danger.
Self-awareness is the essential threshold. It's where the pattern becomes visible and the fear is recognized as history, not current truth. This is what allows for the practice of interrupting the reflex.
Which is exactly what the call framework is designed to do. It forces a pause between the historical fear signal and the present choice. Think of it like this. Layla needed a bigger container for her success. Theo needed his container to thaw, to allow movement and vulnerability.
And Marisol needed to define the borders of her container so that her energy didn't leak out to everyone else's needs. All of this is capacity building, not fixing.
Then comes the shift toward the higher levels. Integrity is moving forward without demanding certainty. You stop waiting for permission from your own nervous system. You allow the fear and the longing to coexist.
For Theo, this was being vulnerable. For Layla, it was saying yes to the job. For Marisol, it was choosing a quiet hour for herself.
And wholeness is the capacity to hold those contradictions without collapsing. It's not happiness, it's complexity. You can be afraid and still move forward, or grieve and still open to connection.
You are large enough to contain the messy complexity of life without fragmenting or denying a part of yourself.
And finally, freedom is the felt experience of sovereignty. Hope stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a direction. As the piece by Helen Mediba highlights, the world only seems kinder when the body stops bracing against it. The kindness was always there. The armor just blocked the view.
And this brings us back full circle to the circles of influence. Hope grows exponentially when you stop fighting what is not yours to control.
You cannot control outcomes, other people's responses, or the future. That is the no influence circle. Let it go. You tend to your effort and communication, that is limited influence. You do your part and release the rest.
But your power lives fully in your choices, your attention, your willingness, and your integrity. That is full influence.
When you shift your energy back to what you can truly own, hope becomes possible because you realize the bigness of the life you desire was never outside your capacity. You were just protecting yourself from it.
So let's leave you with this final reflection. It's often misunderstood, but it is deeply true. Hope is not the risk. The risk is living your whole life protecting yourself from what could ultimately heal you.
Hope is not a promise of a certain outcome. It is merely a direction. It returns every time your body is ready to hold more. It arrives quietly, as a softening you didn't ask for, as a longing you thought you had outgrown.
It is not asking you to be certain. It is asking you to be willing, to soften in the places you once had to harden. Because the softest part of you is not the weakest. It is the bravest. It still believes life can be larger than survival.
Let's take a short pause together. Just a quiet moment of stillness.
Settle into your chair or wherever you are standing. Notice your breath. And in this moment of self-awareness, invite yourself to notice one place where you have interpreted life through fear rather than fact. Just locate the tension, the bracing, the impulse to retreat.
In that stillness, that moment of gentle observation, a choice becomes visible, the possibility of moving wisely.
If you are ready to explore where you are on this pathway and map your body's unique response to uncertain hope, we have a free resource available. It's a guided, gentle, somatic experience called Where Am I on the Pathway to Sovereignty? It helps you hear what your body reveals when hope feels unsafe.
And if you are navigating a period of intense change, when life is shifting and old identities like Marisol's caregiving role feel too small, we have a reflective companion to help you anchor your inner steadiness, your path to knowing yourself in a changing world.
You can find both of those links and the full summary of the frameworks we discussed in our show notes.
As the deep dive reflection by Helen Mediba ultimately concludes, when you learn to meet yourself without bracing, hope stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling like truth.
Climb the staircase, breath by breath, with compassion and presence we rise from stress, from fear to peace, from shame to grace. Climb the staircase, to sovereignty. When you feel unsafe, too much to bear, you shut down or flare, you vanish or glare, your heart beats fast, your breath runs tight, you just want out or to make it right.